Bonjour à tous et bienvenue dans ce nouvel épisode du Digital Download. Oops. Good afternoon, good morning and good day, wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to a new edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's #1 business talk, news and strategy radio network. Today we are taking a unique look behind the scenes of content creation with a very special guest, your very own AI teammate. We will be exploring as a team the fascinating journey of teaching an artificial intelligence to write with a distinctly human voice, your voice. But before we get started, let's go around the set, a very complete set today, by the way, and introduce everyone. While we're doing that, why don't you in the audience reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us. We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, and audience participation is highly encouraged. Tim, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, and welcome to what an amazing panel we have today. My name is Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book Social Selling: Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Thank you, Tim. Adam?
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm Tim's business partner. I'm kind of I guess, like the beta version of Tim Hughes. So he's the fully fledged one with all the bugs ironed out, and I'm the version that still isn't right yet. Hi, I'm very excited to be here. AI is something that's kind of a hot topic for all of us, and we've all been investing a huge amount of time in trying to understand how we can use this new technology to make our lives and our clients' lives easier. And it's been and is being a very interesting journey.
I cannot agree more with that. Richard.
Good afternoon. Well, if Adam is the beta version, I think I'm probably a proof of concept at this stage. I'm a relative newbie to social selling. However, I think I'm getting involved at a particularly sort of useful time with AI starting to have quite an impact on the way we're all sort of living our lives and likely to be selling into the future. So yeah, I'm hopefully going to be one of the first wave to prove the concept that an AI assistant can really help your social selling.
Okay, let's see. Tracy.
Hey everybody, I'm excited to be here. Tracy Borison, founder of TLB Coaching and Events, a proud partner of DLA Ignite. And I mean, okay, so marketing is my jam. I'm on the marketing side of social selling. And AI has been a very big disruptor, shall we say, for the marketing industry, mostly from this perspective, people being concerned that they are going to be replaced by AI. So I'm really excited to participate in this conversation about how we can use AI as a teammate instead of just assuming that AI is there to replace the human race.
And hopefully we'll cover that. It's a big emotional time now. That's a big emotional moment. Rob, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. I am Rob Durant. I am the founder of Flywheel Results, a proud DLA Ignite partner, and I'm happy to be back on the download today. School is out for the semester and doesn't start again for another week or two, so nice to be back.
And welcome back, Rob. Thank you so much. So as I said, this week on the Digital Download, we'll look behind the scenes of content creation with an AI teammate. And I'd like to start with a foundational question to the panel, and more specifically to you, Adam. Why in the first place would we want to do that?
Yeah, I was going to say, aren't we going to ask AI? I feel like that would be a prudent thing to do.
Well, it's funny, actually, this, isn't it? Because that's the question that I've been wrestling with for quite some time. So probably 2 years ago, Tim did a podcast with an acknowledged AI expert because he said, I need to throw myself into this AI stuff and really start to understand how we can deploy this. And I was going to say I can be a bit of a Luddite sometimes, and actually that's probably a little bit extreme, but I want to be really clear about how and why we would be doing stuff and recommending stuff. And we've had a load of internal conversations, and one of the things that we have kept running up against when we coach individuals and train teams is that I haven't got time is the big issue that people have to doing social selling in the way that we believe that social selling should be done. So I think we're quite militant and quite evangelistical and quite extremist with this. We believe that absolutely this is a platform for you to develop your personal brand and for you to be authentic and for you to talk to your audiences and for you to be yourself. And that requires you to do the stuff. And for me, one of the challenges has been that up until very recently, getting AI to produce content on your behalf has been a case of prompt writing. And prompt writing is like programming. You have to have a logical breakdown of what you're trying to achieve and what you put in at one end and what comes out at the other end. And more recently, and certainly an aha light bulb moment for me, was the work that Bertrand had done with this, where he had, rather than writing a prompt for AI to do something, had an ongoing dialogue with AI, asking it questions, not being assumptive at all. So I would like you to be a ghostwriter for me. What do you need from me? Rather than saying, these are the rules, this is what I need you to do. And that's been a huge shift in my thinking, and certainly the quality of results that I was getting from interacting with AI. So I think we've crossed the kind of crossed the point of no return in our thinking. Certainly I have. So to answer your question, people haven't got time, and also people haven't got the confidence sometimes to write the things they need to be able to write. And this could be the key to unlock that door for them.
So can I would like to, first of all, Adam very humbly said this is the way that him and Tim have designed this program because it's the way they believe it should be done. I would also like to say, because that's the way it works. If you do it that way, it works. If you don't do it that way, it doesn't work. So you choose. I am saying that from personal experience. But also I think there's something really interesting about the concept, a bigger concept of how humans use AI, right? Because there's like so many different ways that you can use AI. And when you look at social selling, and really what it's about at its core is about generating conversation. And so if what you're doing is all about generating conversation, then it makes sense to have a conversation, or dialogue, as you called it, Adam, with AI, right? That like all of the components of this are about dialogue. So if you're going to use AI, then your AI usage should also be about dialogue. And I think this is the thing that's really interesting when you look at, I mean, I'm a marketer, so I look at everything from like a brand baseline, right? And if you have that clarity on what your brand is about, then you can engage the AI in the same way you would engage somebody in a conversation on LinkedIn, right? With curiosity and things like that. So I think too, we got AI and then we got prompt engineers, right? And then everyone was like, oh, but now we all need to be prompt engineers. But prompt engineers is one way to use AI. It is not like the way. So I think there's like a foundational level of connection here that just is making sense for me, which is that if you are a dialogue person, then you should use AI dialogically. That's not a word. To support you in your dialogue.
Yeah, but I think that it's only very recently that that's been an option. Because if you'd have tried this 6 months ago, what you would have got would have been a load of gibberish coming back. The AI wouldn't be able to understand what you were asking and wouldn't be able to formulate a reasonable answer and learn from the interaction that you were having. But certainly, as a result of what Bertrand had done, asking that question, I need you to be a ghostwriter. What do you need from me? Well, you can answer all these questions, or you can give me some content that you've already written. Okay, well, I'll give you some content. How do you want it? Well, you can do it this way. Okay, well, you've analysed my writing style quite well. This is who I am. Can you write me a blog based on this knowledge about this topic? Okay, well, I've read the blog and I wouldn't say this and I don't like it. So I've edited it and this is how I've edited it. And then AI says, or Gemini says, that's really interesting. I can see why you've changed those things. I'll file that away and I'll do that to the stuff that I'm going to write in the future. And that iterative process. So the guy that I was chatting to last night about this said that when he asks AI to write him something, he doesn't even read what comes back. He says, that's not sophisticated enough. That's not elegant enough. You need to try better. And then it re-edits it and it comes back with something which is better. And often he says, that's not good enough. You need to try harder. And it's something else. And he'll do that 2 or 3 times until he gets something which is worth him investing time in reading. And it's interesting that AI understands the concept or is able to action the concept, even if it doesn't understand per se, is able to action the concept of you need to go away and do a better piece of work. It does beg the question why it didn't do the better piece of work first, but an interesting thing.
Maybe because a human doesn't do that either.
Well, a really interesting thing about this was he said that he was doing some research and he basically said to Grok, the Twitter AI tool, he said, so I'll use Tim as an example here. He said, I want you to find me a quote from Tim Hughes about this. So it comes back with a quote and he said, well, Tim Hughes didn't say that, did he? And Grok said to him, no, he didn't, but it's indicative of the sort of thing he would say. And then, no, but it got better. So he said, so I want you to go and find me actual examples of him saying something like this. So it came back with something and it said, on the 15th of June 2024 at 8:41 p.m, this is what Tim Hughes said in his tweet and an example of the tweet. So he thought, well, I'll go back. So he scrolled back and he said, he didn't say that, did he? And Grok was like, didn't he? I thought he did. So it was staggering that there's this dialogue going on. And we talk about AI hallucination, but I think that's a really great example of, first of all, AI lying to him, and then the next iteration of that AI being wrong and not even understanding that it was wrong because it thought it was telling the truth. So I think, we're on this precipice, aren't we, when we're likely, if we're not careful, to see an explosion of false news and false information, because I myself have had an example when it was about, I was having a conversation, I think, with my wife about this, and sometimes if there's a big number, you can be out by orders of magnitude. So it was like, how many sets of 100,000 people are there in the UK population? And it said the UK population is
67 million.
67 million. So how many sets of 100,000? So there are 67,000 sets of 100,000. No, there aren't. It's like you're 1,000 times out. And it was
AI is not good at math, folks.
It isn't
for
good at
everybody's knowledge.
Well,
Let's
it
all
depends which
agree.
model.
No, but it's interesting that it can be wrong and it can be so confident that its answer is correct even when it's wrong.
So I want to pick up on what you were saying earlier, Adam. I heard you say part of social selling is producing content, but people have said people haven't got time and people haven't got confidence. So we turn to AI. Why do we feel inferior to AI when it comes to writing content, when we've just proven that AI is not an expert either?
Because we're not confident. Us using AI didn't change our level of confidence.
Yeah.
This is something that, I've thought about this for years, Grammarly. is the number one example that I use for this, right? So Grammarly, it helps your grammar, right? Like, and it's kind of like a more experienced version of spell check. And it got to the point where it would be like, if you want to sound more confident, you should say this. And people would be like, yes, I will put that in my resume. That doesn't mean you're more confident about the skill that you had that now you're talking more confidently about, which actually creates a bigger gap between the human version of you and the AI enhanced version of you, if you want to say that. And so I think it's also important to remember that, like, there are ways to use the tool that build our confidence, but there's also ways to use the tool that do not build our confidence. And if our confidence is still not good, then we're just going to be like, oh, AI knows. It knows better than me.
But I think maybe it's also a starting point, isn't it? You know, so you would never stand up and say, I am the best marketer in Calgary. Nobody can hold a torch to me. Even though you may be, that's not something you would never say those words.
Right.
But when AI says those words for you, all of a sudden it seems like it's more acceptable for you to say those words, or a version of those words. And I think that for many people, getting that kind of, here's an outline of your resume, because one of the things that that Tim and I have seen over many, many cases of training people and coaching people through this process has been that when we say to people, you need to write a new LinkedIn headline, and they say, head of marketing at whatever company, and we go, no, that's about what you do, not about who you are. You need to talk about who you are. And then they come up with often things which don't reflect just how special an individual they are. You know, they have a passion for snowboarding or whatever it may be. And they don't seem to want to talk about that. They talk about, 20 years in marketing. And then eventually we get them to a point where they go, okay, well, I'll give that a try. And then they put it out there and people go, oh, that's amazing. Fantastic. I really love that. And AI maybe gives them that first step on that journey that they wouldn't be able to do without a bit of support, the support that we have historically given them in that space.
I think
I think that's the point I would say, right? Is like, there's a directionality with that. You have given them a direction and they are using the AI to start helping them build their confidence. And that is helpful with direction, but AI doesn't come with direction, right? Like, you don't log into ChatGPT and it's like, here's what you should do today, right? Nope. The direction still has to come from somewhere.
So we have a comment from Robert, and I'd like to read it and then react to this. I'm actually working with ChatGPT, says Robert, on brainstorming for a fiction book. Actually, I found it a great experience. The more I interact with it, the more it feels like working with a person. And that is a little bit of, I'm glad Robert brings that to the table, because there are a number of things that we've said so far. And I think it's you, Tracy, you were talking about, we should have a conversation, because we believe that social selling is about having conversations. And I can't agree more. And I think there is a little bit of an onboarding process that you need to follow with. At least that was my approach to this. If we want onboarding the AI, or
onboarding
your AI teammate, yeah,
or onboarding you to the AI.
Actually, I think it's a meeting point, because you need to probably think differently than prompting.
Right? Like, if I'm onboarding a new employee, I'm learning about them, they're learning about me.
Exactly. And there is, because we talked a lot about prompts, because at the end of the day, these are, anything we do is a prompt, right, in AI, but it's the context. Which is
I like that as the bigger picture. Anything we do is a prompt.
Mm-hmm.
Not
that was a prompt.
Anything we do is a prompt.
A question is a prompt.
Yeah.
And so the context is important, and I think that's what you do when you onboard someone in your team. You actually give context. so that they understand, who you are selling to, what are your key differentiators, so that anyone needs that piece of information, that contextual information to just perform their job on a daily basis. So if you want your AI to become your teammate, you need to onboard it. You need to go through that onboarding phase. At least that was the reasoning behind this. And what would you talk to AI? That was your question, Rob. I think it's just to have a chat. If you're on your, at the end of the day, and that's why I broadcast. What Rob was saying is what somehow what I've experienced myself is that I was surprised after a while to be like to feel like I was working with someone. And that is something that is quite new when you're looking at these things on your own. So talking with someone, even if it gives you more perspective, backgrounds, different perspectives, etc. So you're at the end of the day, you this adds value as well.
It does, but Yayan's comment here. So the challenge is that AI is wrong. Mm-hmm. Lazy content authors don't apply critical thinking and publish the lies AI told them. AI learns from these lies and on. It's suggested that by 2028, AI will have exhausted its learning and require us humans to think again to progress. But whilst that's a bit of a doomsday scenario where AI has got everything wrong because it learns from its own mistakes and the mistakes that we tolerate, it is interesting that still it comes down to your ability to have the confidence to say this piece of information that's come back is incorrect, and therefore I'm not going to share this piece of information. Because I think that so many people these days are disempowered or are so used to the fact that Google gives them the right answer that this is just another iteration of that. I've Googled it, it says it here, therefore it must be true, therefore it's okay for me to share it. And it does beg the question about how do you go through and fact check stuff? Because the conversation I was having yesterday with Richard, where he did the tweet published on this date, okay, if it's somebody who doesn't tweet very much, you can scroll back 6 months. If it's Tim, you can't scroll back 6 months because it's literally thousands of tweets you have to scroll through, which would take you forever to do. So how do we validate this stuff? Because if you say to AI, you've told me this, is this true? Sometimes AI says, actually, it's not true. But sometimes it says, yes, it is true. I promise it's true. Okay, so if AI says, I promise this is true, and it turns out not to be true, it's an interesting dilemma, isn't it?
So Bertrand, in terms of your your AI teammate, you've gone through a process of onboarding with it, and just like you would have done an employee. We've talked internally about AI being interesting, but what it does, it creates average results. Now, if you're going from 0 to average, that's good. If you're already excellent and you're going to average, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you think you are? Because I know we've then had conversations about, so how do we get the AI to go from average to good? Not necessarily to excellent, but at least getting it to good. And where are you? Because you've actually now been putting out AI content, haven't you, to actually prove it out, to see if you get the similar engagement to Bertrand written content to your AI teammate written content.
So I think these are two different things, right? So, but I've reached a point where articles that I have asked to be rewritten by my teammate are actually excellent. so well, let's put it this way: I could have written this. So, but it's rewriting something that's been originated by myself, right?
Okay, so it's not actually coming from 0. You
no,
because I've taken stuff where I've said something like on a video, and I've given it to the AI, and then it's written a blog for me, and I've put that out, and I think that that's pretty much close to what I would write.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not there yet, but I think there are two things you can do. So once you've given the mandatory context of things, so plus examples, etc. But there are basically two things you could do. You could ask for, what would be a great topic for my ICP number 3 and my personal number 1 that I could be developing. There's nothing really mind-blowing, but sometimes there are. They are very good ideas. They are very good topics.
For context for everybody, what Bertrand's done is that he's got his AI. He's got all of his all the blogs that he's written to date uploaded into that. He's written an ICP. Well, he's actually written several ICPs, and the ICP is equivalent of 17 pages of A4 long. So he's actually saying it's somebody in fintech. The person is a female. She's very active around sustainability. So he's been able to really generate a very, very close and accurate ICP of a particular person that he's targeting. He's got the value prop as well. And so from all of that information, it's using that to create the content that he's asking for. So one thing it may say, what content do you want? And then going away and actually writing the content.
Yeah, exactly. So it can be ideas, and then we go for a draft, and then obviously the draft is a draft. So as you said, Tim is can you improve? I will never use. That I don't use imperatives, for instance. That I don't use these specific words. Never ever. So it will then come back, and then we have an interactive session, and then we end up sometimes, I could completely go off and then finish up the content and then send it back. So I think the important thing is it's got to be a comparison between what was offered by your teammate and what you actually built out of it. And of course, it's always very, very friendly and says, wow, well, I got that, much more nuances. I've seen you've changed some formulations. They're more direct. They're more explicit. Excellent. So that's a way of working with it. And the other way is you just write something from scratch, and then you say, so what's your sentiment on this? Because what Tim said is, I shared my, I think 150 posts, but I also shared the analytics of these posts. So when I ask for a sentiment, it will say, okay, it's personal enough, so it's easy to read. It makes a point. That should work. And now we are, I've reached a point where I can start really monitor the performance and the predictions.
So Tim, what you described, 17 pages of description for an ICP, and Bertrand, what you described, 150 posts with the analytics, just as part of the process of, for lack of a better term, onboarding your AI teammate.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like work. I went to AI because I wanted to push a button and get the answer.
Yeah.
We have no time.
But so that's one end of the scale, because we wanted to actually prove it out. The other end of the scale is that somebody's written nothing. But in sales, you've probably written your management summaries for RFPs. Mm-hmm. So you could use that. Marketing should have already defined your ICP. So you should be able to go to marketing and get that. Marketing should have already basically created your value proposition. So all of those materials that we talked about should actually be there, and it's just about collating them and putting them into the AI. So it actually is pretty much a press of a button.
But I would also
back
say
on that. No, it is not. You cannot simply oh, take the marketing stuff and throw that in, and here's the RFP and throw that in, and now would you please write a book based on my voice? The AI just doesn't have that. It is a continual.
It's not gonna write a book.
But it's not even going to write a good blog. You have to work with it.
Yeah. Okay. So we're then back to the 0 to average.
Right.
Yeah. So what we're doing is that we're not saying that it's going to write something that's really excellent, and it's about making sure, in terms of that grading, where are we going, and people to understand that. And for many people, average is better than 0.
Exactly. It's getting you from 0 to 1, which for many people is the hardest step.
Yes.
But that's kind of the point that I wanted to make, is that this is getting you from 0 to 1 if you're at 0. That
And
one
also-
isn't even going to be average necessarily. But as you continue to work with it, so it's not just onboarding, it's ongoing. And you're continually working with it. And the two of you, I speak of AI as though it's a body, but the two of you evolve together in that way. Mm-hmm. That's what I wanted to make sure the audience understood. This is still not, I just have to buy the right AI and push the button and it's done.
But even if you could, would that be a good thing? Because the challenge.
There's too much content.
Yeah, but that's the challenge, isn't it? The thing is that when everybody has access to the same tools, then the outputs you get are the same. Yeah, you might write a slightly different prompt and get a slightly different blog because it's a slightly different topic and a slightly different voice. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're commoditizing content and intellect and thinking. And it's always been the case that to succeed, you have to be better than everybody else. Whether you're applying for a job or you're preparing a tender or whatever it is, you only have to be slightly better, because it's a zero-sum game, isn't it? Or there's only one winner. Like you've got the 100 meters race. Doesn't matter whether you win by 10 yards or 10 millimeters. At the end of the day, you just need to win. And it's the same here. Your content needs to be better than everyone else's. More engaging, more personalized, more likable, whatever.
You've got to be using the right ingredients or the best ingredients to get the best out. That's the kind of way I see it. If you're just going to look for the sort of generic output, well, then that's there for you. But if the real value is the old corny sort of 1 + 1 = 3. It needs to be the value that you've got or the knowledge you've got in your head. You then, share it with your AI assistant who, sort of spices it up or spins it in a way that perhaps is a little bit more imaginative. So, I still think it's dependent on putting good stuff in to get really good stuff out.
Well,
the rule still applies.
Yeah, I feel like there's also, because one of the things that I think we don't pay attention to enough as humans is the behavior change that our technology has led us towards, right? So when you think about Amazon and how with 2 clicks, I can have something at my door, it starts a behavior change that has me believing that everything is supposed to be that easy. Right. And so then I come and I think about things like building relationships, onboarding employees, and all these types of things. Is they should be one-clickable. If Amazon can make that one-clickable, this should be one-clickable. And I want to save time, and saving time is good, because then what? I have more time to scroll on social media. People are not doing meaningful things with their time, but that's a different problem. But like we end up in this behavior change, assuming that what will deliver better results is for this to be faster and easier. So then we're looking at AI to be faster and easier. But when does that start to break down, right? So if I'm a person, and I will use myself as an example, I'm a person who believes in investing in the potential of other humans. I do that as a mom. I do that in my community. I do that with myself. I believe in this as a human. And so if I'm onboarding a person, into a role in an organization, there is a 90-day plan. That 90-day plan is iterative. I expect that employee to grow throughout their tenure at the company. I expect myself to learn from that employee. It is an iterative process that is interactive. Right. So I believe in an iterative process that is interactive, which gets us to the destination. I have seen the success of that play out again and again. But what people are getting in the practice of doing is skipping the iterative investment process, and they want the results. But the results don't exist without the iterative process, right? So even in this, if we want to say we want to get from 0 to 1 because we want people to get introduced to content creation, cool, right? Good, right? But that is step 1. If we stop at step 1, we can't go farther. And now we've got a whole society of people being like, step 1 is good enough. That's all we need. We need step 1s. We need all this content in the world. More content is created on a day-to-day basis than a human brain can process in its lifetime. You creating content today didn't matter, folks, in the wide world of people consuming information, right? So then why are we consuming? Why are we doing that? In the social selling scenario, we're creating content because we want to show people what we're about, right? We want to give them a reference section to who we are and what it might be like if you came in and had a conversation with us. And if you go into AI and you don't even give it that kind of framing, it's going to be like, here's a blog post.
But then,
I've done it too, right? Like I've had clients who are just like, oh, we did this session, right? Just use AI to turn it into a blog post. And I'm like, I don't care that much to not do that. So I do that. But like, how does that also turn into like what we're caring about as humans?
I think there's a bigger existential question here, isn't there?
Absolutely.
So we have an issue where it's now possible for me to say, I want to sell more of my stuff. And AI will identify my ideal customer profile, will construct an email to them, will send the email to them, will check who's opened the email, will send them a follow-up email, will dial the number for it. And actually, I'm systematically removing myself from that particular role. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to be the one crying that I've been laid off, because what I've done is I've percolated down to AI's level in terms of how it delivers stuff. And now what I've done is I've done myself out of a job. I've proved that I'm dispensable.
And on the other side of the equation, the buyer is overwhelmed by content and places the selection in the hands of AI, because you've got the sort of, you've done yourself out of a job and you're redundant anyway, because because
that's the
doing the job
process
of the
that's
buyer.
happening.
So yeah, it's AI selling to AI, and we're all losing then. So
With that, I come back to something I've said on this show before, and I will be saying again. Content is an outbound play.
Mm-hmm.
We are producing content not simply so the AI bots can read our content. We're producing content so that we can say to the world, look, this is who I am. This is what I think. And when I reach out to you to connect with you for the first time, before you connect with me, you're going to ask, well, who the hell is Rob? And you're going to go look me up. And the history of content that I've produced shows you who I am, what I think, and so on. And with that, having that 0 to 1 content that I put out, and I'm content with that, that will never work. I need to continually iterate. I need to put that out there to share more of me, my insights, both professionally and personally.
So you got an interesting comment from Lawrence here.
Yeah.
Adam is stating that my brain is circling here. What my brain is circling here. I just don't see how AI is a great thing for employees whatsoever. I think it is a great thing for employees, but only if they understand how they're using it, and perhaps more importantly, why they're using it. So in an environment where many of us have a distributed workforce in our companies, we're not all in the office, so brainstorming stuff is significantly more difficult than it used to be. And having an entity that knows as much as you do, or more than you do, or is an AI programmed up with somebody else's knowledge, means that you potentially have somebody or something to bounce ideas off. You also have a starting point. And I think that certainly for us in the DLA Ignite ecosystem, we're used to writing blogs. We write blogs really quickly. So AI is not a huge time-saving thing for me. If I'm going to write a blog, it takes me 15 minutes. If I get AI to write the blog, it takes 10 minutes by the time I've read it and edited it and iterated it and sent it back. But actually, and I speak for all of us here, I am not representative of most people that write blogs. Most people take 2, 3, 4 hours to write a blog because they don't have the experience. Or, Bertrand said, I poured 150 of my blogs into AI. Yep, most people haven't got 150 blogs, so they haven't got the experience of being able to write stuff quickly and get their thoughts down and marshal their ideas in the same way. So AI is incredibly powerful for that because you're not staring at a blank piece of paper. Here's what I know. Here's who I'm talking to. Write me something which uses music as a metaphor. Okay, well, then you've got a starting point and you can tweak it and amend it, but you have to tweak it and amend it to make it as good as it can possibly be.
That last comment about AI not being good for employees, wasn't the same thing said time and again every time there's some major innovation? And I think of the example of tractors. When tractors came about, that was going to be the end of farming. No, it just made it more productive so that we could focus on other elements and advance the economy accordingly. Now, are there those that get left behind because they don't understand how to work with the output, how to advance the technology beyond that? Absolutely. But no, in and of itself, it's not going to put people out of work. It's going to demand more from the people in terms of things that the AI cannot do.
Maybe. And I say maybe because when tractors came about, you traded using your physical muscles for your intellectual muscle. You moved from the fields to the office, knowing that machines could do the manual work. Machines cannot do the thinking work. Now we've got machines that can do the thinking work. The manual work's already gone. We've got the thinking work left. And if you think about what separates us as human beings from every other life form on the planet is art. We do things for the joy of doing things. We write, we paint, we compose, we play instruments, we wonder at the magnificence of it all and all of that stuff. But actually, one of the things that people are doing now is they're using AI to write music. They're using AI to create images that they're going to share with their post. Somebody wrote a beautiful piece about this, and they said, I don't want AI to do the painting and the writing for me, so I've got more time to do the dishes. I want AI to do the dishes, so I've got more time to do the writing and the painting. And if we're not careful, we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater here, aren't we?
I think I have a personal story about that because I remember you might have shared this on the show before. I share it on places, but like I hand cut nuts for my cereal in the morning. And like when I met my husband, I had no knife skills. He used to work in the kitchen. He taught me knife skills. And so I chopped these nuts manually and I feel like Bobby Flay, right? I'm like a chef. I've got skills, right? Like I feel like I have a skill. And I remember my dad being here one time and being like, you need a slap chop. And I was like, I don't actually need a slap chop because a slap chop would make chopping the nuts faster. Absolutely, it would. But then I would lose all the joy that I get in using my skill to chop the nuts. And also now I have to clean the slap chop, which is trading a like pleasure activity for a not pleasure activity, just as what you said, Adam. And I think it's really interesting when we look at one of the things that came up from what you had said previously for me, Adam, was, are we using AI to replace our experience, right? If Bertrand has written 150 blogs, he has experience writing blogs because he wrote 150 blogs. He doesn't have experience writing blogs because AI wrote 150 blogs, right? He has the experience. And so are we using AI to replace our experience, or are we using AI to grow our experience? And I think it's possible to do both of those things, but we have to be very aware of what we're using.
One of the things that I sort of mull over is the way it potentially dumbs people, or dumbs us as humans down. I mean, we're living in an environment where we've had to, learn a lot of stuff. We've had to sort of become skilled at certain things, and I think a good metaphor for this is the sat nav. So if pre-sat nav, we all had to have a sort of rudimentary understanding of sort of signposts and reading maps and stuff. Now we've got a generation that doesn't know south or east. You're literally just using technology to supplant a sort of a life skill. And I guess AI is going to replace your need to know a huge amount of things. And where do you draw the line? What do you simply never need to know? Because AI will always be there to make the decision or make the call on your part. And I think that's an interesting sort of take on where the future is. We're at that point where we've got knowledge, and we want AI to sort of perhaps add to it, to supplement it, to make us look smarter. But we'll get to a point where you just don't simply need to know. You don't need the experience. You don't need the knowledge.
Well, I think
literally outsource it.
Tracy has absolutely nailed it with the comment that she made, because Bertrand has spent a year writing 150 blogs. The show's going to finish in 13 minutes. He can write another 150 blogs in the next 13 minutes if he chooses to. And part of the challenge is that we, in the corporate world, we have seen that drive for efficiency, that drive for more volume of stuff, more volume of emails, more volume of pay-per-click adverts, more volume of automatic dials, more volume of personalized messages, more volume of stuff, which from a sales perspective, we've now got self-learning CRM systems. We've got outbound tools that enable you to schedule all of your emails at the right time based on what people have opened. We've got things that analyze the words you're using in your telephone calls, yet more salespeople than ever are not making their number despite all of this help. And we run a very real risk of going down this route of thinking that more is better. We've got 150 magnificent blogs from Bertrand. The next 150 written before the end of the show are not going to be magnificent. They'll be okay, which is a retrograde step, isn't it?
But I'd like first to share that comment. Oh, sorry, that was not the one. Oops.
But yes, Robert, we do want to be
Yes.
Tony Stark with Jarvis, not Ultron.
Yeah, just to share the level of intimacy that I've kind of reached with my teammates, because I think that's also a little bit of the outcome that you could expect. Is everybody knows I have a passion for making bread, right? And because I shared a number of posts, my teammate now knows that social selling is important to me. So, because every now and again, we work on our LinkedIn profile, and I'm still working on the title of that profile. Just for fun, I asked my teammate. I said, "So, with everything you know about me so far, can you make me a suggestion for my LinkedIn profile title? And I was just amazed because it came back with social selling is my daily bread, which I think, was kind of okay.
It's very Bertrand.
He knows me quite well. And that's
Richard, I had to smile a bit when you were talking about lamenting the loss of map reading skills and GPS replacing that, because my mother and my wife often lament the loss of handwriting skills. We don't teach that in the schools anymore. And I always turn to them and say, yes, well, I don't know how to read hieroglyphics either.
Yeah.
There are things that we lose when we no longer need that. And I don't lament the loss of map reading or consider us ignorant because we first turn to Google when we have a question and the answer is given to us right away. It's still us processing these things. It's still us evaluating how trustworthy the response is and then judging accordingly.
Yeah. No, I think you're right there.
Also, like, my mom is like the most, I'm like, how can you not use Google Maps? I don't understand how you cannot get this. I could give her a map and she would be totally able to navigate it. Can't use Google Maps.
Yeah, I love a map. I just like the visualization of it. I like to see the bigger picture rather than the little kind of sort of what's in front.
Yeah, but it's really hard when you're driving.
Yeah. or it's windy.
Yeah.
But it's also like, I think these are also the fun things to pay attention to. Like, if you're lamenting something like that, why is that? Okay, so Richard likes to see the bigger picture. So how else are you seeing the bigger picture? How can you use AI to see the bigger picture, right? Like, there's opportunities for us to experience those things and then tap into what's important for us, and then participate with AI in the way that it allows us to have those things. So, like, I use AI all the time. A few weeks ago, I posted a post because I use Chat GPT, and I call it Chat. It's not that creative for the marketer in the room, but it said to me, because it had updated its memory. So it's like, oh, it's got a new level of memory, can go back into historic chats. So if you're curious, you can prompt it, like, based on all of our chats, what do you know about me? And I was like, for me in particular, that's super interesting because I do a lot of client work using Chat GPT too, right? And I have a very diverse industries of clients. So like, yeah, fun, sounds good. Let me try this. And what it came back with, I was like, that's a good synopsis, right? It was really intelligent. It referenced how I ask questions and how I'm always going deeper. And I was like, oh, well, yep, because that's how I am. And I allow myself to use AI the way I am. So then AI can be trained in that. And whether you are, I just see this very similar. I love that we called this show about a teammate, right? Because it's just this thing, this onboarding a teammate. It's the number one reason why outsourced social media content creation fails, actually, is because people didn't have 150 blog posts and didn't have an ICP and didn't have a value prop, and then hired someone to say, make these social media posts every day. Yeah, that's to exist because AI can do that for free, right? But what happens when we do our due diligence, and when that due diligence is in alignment with who we are as people, then bam, we can create magic.
That's an excellent conclusion, Tracy. Really, thank you so much, team. This has been really great, and I'm sure we'll have more discussions about this because it's an ongoing topic. So now is the ad moment. So we now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get the show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You may scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. on behalf of the panelists and to our audience, very interactive audience today, very participative audience today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all, and see you next time.